Not everything that weighs heavy is gold, and not every inheritance is measured in money. That night at 3 in the morning, I saw my son robbing me. He was carrying a chest, 350 pounds, $17.5 million in jewelry and gold. I watched him from the darkness. He was sweating, breathing hard, with another man, dragging it out of my house like thieves. And I did nothing. I did not scream. I did not stop him. I did not call the police. When he opened that chest, he thought he had destroyed me. But I had already destroyed him, weeks before. Because a father who truly loves also knows how to punish. And the hardest punishment is not taking away the gold. It is letting him see who he is without it. If this story stirs something inside you, then subscribe to William's Revenge Stories. Every day I share a story that could be yours, or someone you know. Tell us where you are listening from. My name is William Anderson. I am 81 years old. I live on an estate on the outskirts of Vermont, in a house that belonged to my grandfather, and his grandfather before him. This house smells of old wood, of cedar oil, of candles my wife lit every night before sleeping. It has been 22 years since she died, and 3 weeks since I discovered the hole where everything I built in my life used to be. Not the gold, not the jewelry, but the trust. That night when I entered the back room and saw the empty space where the chest always was, I did not scream. I did not call anyone. I just stood there, hands shaking, staring at the dust on the stone floor. There was a perfect rectangular mark, clean, like a scar on the skin of the house, and I smiled because I already knew who had done it. The chest weighed 350 pounds. Inside were jewels my grandfather carved with his own hands, gold bars my father saved for 50 years, rings that belonged to queens, necklaces that saw wars, bracelets promised as dowries in weddings no one remembers anymore. All appraised at $17.5 million, but to me it was not money. It was history. It was the sweat of 3 generations of jewelers who never stole, who never lied, who never betrayed anyone. And that night my son, my only son, dragged it out of this house as if it were trash, as if I were a stupid old man who would not notice. I sat on the floor, in that same room, with my back against the cold wall, and I stayed there, staring at that void, feeling the cold of the stone getting into my bones. I stayed like that until dawn. Outside I heard the roosters crowing, the same sound I have heard every morning for 60 years. But that morning it sounded different, like a lament, as if even the roosters knew what had happened. Florence, my housekeeper, arrived at 6 in the morning as always. She has worked with me for 32 years. She was the one who raised my son when my wife got sick. She was the one who bathed him, who made him breakfast, who waited for him at the door when he came back from school. That morning she walked into the kitchen, put the water on to boil, and saw me sitting in the living room, still wearing the same clothes from the day before. The knees of my pants had dust on them. My hands were dirty. My face, I do not know how my face looked, but she looked at me and knew everything without me saying a word. Florence approached slowly, the way one approaches someone who is wounded. She put her hand on my shoulder, a wrinkled hand, warm, honest, and she asked in a low voice, almost a whisper, "He took it, didn't he?" I nodded. I could not speak. She closed her eyes. I saw her face crumble, how her wrinkles deepened, and she cried. She cried for me. She cried for that boy she raised who was now a thief. She cried for what had been lost, and I sat there, with cold hands and an empty soul. I let her cry, because she was crying tears I could no longer shed. Richard is my son. He is 48 years old. He lives in New York City, in an apartment that costs more than I earned in my entire life. He is a businessman, or so he says. He always comes in a suit, with a Swiss watch, with expensive cologne that smells like money and lies. But I know him. I know how he walks when he is nervous. I know how he looks away when he lies. I know how he clenches his jaw when he is planning something. And in the last 6 months, every time he came to visit me, he looked toward the back room. He always found an excuse to go by there. "Dad, don't you want me to help you organize? Dad, this is very messy. You should modernize the house." But I knew what he was looking for. I knew he did not come to see me. He came to study, to measure, to plan. 3 months ago, he brought a man with him. His name was Steve Vance. Tall, gray suit, white smile, soft hands that had never worked. He said he was a financial advisor, He said he could help me protect my assets. He spoke fast, with that fake confidence of someone who wants to convince you of something you do not need, with technical words that sounded important but meant nothing. Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, you cannot keep a fortune like this stored in a house without alarms, without insurance, without real protection. It is a risk. I looked at him. Then I looked at my son, and I said with a calm voice, I have been guarding this for 60 years. I was never robbed. Nothing ever happened to me. Steve smiled, a smile that did not reach his eyes. Richard smiled too, but it was not a smile of relief. It was a smile of patience, as if they were waiting for the right moment, like two wolves watching an old lamb. My wife was named Helen. She died of cancer in 2003. She spent her last months in this same living room, sitting in that wicker chair that is still there, looking at the garden. She liked seeing the roses. She said they reminded her that life goes on, even when the body shuts down. One day, shortly before dying, she took my hand. Her fingers were cold, so cold. She looked at me with those green eyes that made me fall in love when I was 20, and she said, William, do not give everything to Richard. Teach him to deserve it first. I did not understand. Why do you say that, honey? She squeezed my hand with the little strength she had left. Promise me. And I promised her. But when she died, and Richard was the only thing I had left. So I tried to trust. I tried to believe he was the good man I wanted him to be. But Helen was right. She was always right. The night of the robbery, Richard came with Camilla, his wife. They arrived late, close to 11 at night. They said they were passing through on their way to the coast, that they wanted to say hello. A lie. The coast is in the opposite direction. But I said nothing. We had dinner together. Florence had prepared lamb, Richard's favorite when he was a boy. But he barely tasted it. Camilla barely looked at me. She was always like that. Cold. Polite but cold. Like a beautiful but empty statue. Richard talked about business, about trips, about an important contract in Boston. Things that do not matter to me anymore. I just wanted him to stay a little longer, to ask me how I was, to talk about something real, about us, about before. But he did not. At midnight, they left. He hugged me at the door. A quick hug. Mechanical. He said, Get some rest, Dad. And I believed him. I went to sleep thinking that maybe, just maybe, there was still something of my son in there. How foolish I was. I woke up at 3 in the morning. I do not know why. Sometimes it happens. At my age, sleep is light. I heard a noise. It was not loud. It was like a scraping sound, a slow drag, something heavy moving across the wood floor. Then a soft thud. Another one. I got up. My heart was beating fast, not from fear, from something worse, from confirmation. I walked barefoot to the hallway. My feet made the old floorboards creak, but they did not hear me. They were focused. The door to the back room was ajar. There was a yellow light moving inside, a flashlight, and I saw a shadow, a silhouette I have known since he was born. The broad shoulders, the way he leaned, the way he moved his hands. Richard was there, with a flashlight in his hand, and behind him, another man, Steve. They were carrying the chest between the two of them, slowly, in silence, like thieves in the night. I stayed there, hiding behind the wall, in the darkness, watching my son rob me. I did not move a muscle. I did not breathe loud. I just watched. I saw how they grunted from the effort, how they coordinated without speaking, how they knew the way, as if they had practiced it. And maybe they did. Maybe they came other nights when I was sleeping, measuring, planning. I saw them pass in front of me, less than 10 feet away. So close I could smell Richard's expensive cologne, and something inside me died in that moment. It was not love. That had already died before. It was hope, the last hope that I had been wrong, that it was all a misunderstanding. But no, there he was, my son, carrying what he thought was my fortune, taking it out of my house, robbing me. They went out the back door. I heard the engine of a van. I heard them lifting the chest with a ramp, the noise of metal against metal, how they secured it with ropes, how they closed the doors with 2 dry slams, and then the engine drove away. The sound faded into the night until it disappeared, and everything remained silent. A heavy silence. Absolute. I stood there, in the middle of the dark living room, with cold hands, with a slow heart, and I thought, he did it. He really did it. But I did not cry, because in that moment, something inside me broke. It was not sadness. It was something deeper. It was the confirmation that the son I thought I had never existed. It was just an illusion, a dream, a lie I told myself for 48 years. The next morning, Florence arrived early as always. She found me sitting in the kitchen, with a cold coffee in my hand. I had not moved in hours. I was still wearing the same clothes. Dry eyes, a lost gaze. She came in, saw me, and knew. "Mr. Anderson," she said with a broken voice. I raised my hand. "I know, Florence, I know." My voice sounded strange, hollow, as if it came from very far away. She sat in front of me. Her eyes were red. She had cried at her house. I knew it. "Are you going to call the police?" I shook my head. Slowly. "Not yet." She frowned. "Why?" And I looked her in the eyes. "Because first I want him to know what he did. I want him to open that chest. I want him to see what is inside. And when he sees it, he is going to understand who I am." Florence looked at me without understanding. I had not told her the plan yet. There was no plan yet. There was only rage, and justice, and a decision cold as steel. That same afternoon, when the sun started to set over the hills, I called Elijah Ford. He is my friend of more than 50 years. We were workshop partners. We learned the trade together. We grew old together. We buried our parents together. We celebrated births. We mourned deaths. I told him what happened, every detail. He stayed silent for a long time. So long I thought he had hung up. Then he said with a tired voice, "William, I warned you. I told you that boy was not the same anymore." I sighed. "I know, Elijah. I know." There was another silence. I could hear his breathing on the other side. And then he asked, "What are you going to do?" I closed my eyes. And I answered with a calm I did not know I had. A cold calm, deadly. "I am going to teach him a lesson he will never forget, even if it costs me the little family I have left." Elijah said nothing more, but I knew he understood, because he is also a father, and he also knows what hurts. Richard was born on February 14th of 1977. It snowed that day in Vermont, something rare for that time of year. Helen said it was a sign. "This boy is going to be special," she told me while holding him for the first time. I looked at him. He was so small he fit in my two hands. He had his eyes closed, red skin, wet black hair, and when I touched him, he opened his eyes and looked at me, and I felt something I had never felt before. It was not just love. It was responsibility. It was a promise. It was the certainty that this boy was going to do everything I could not be. I hugged him, and I whispered, "I am going to take care of you, always." The first years were beautiful. Richard grew fast. He learned to walk before he was 1, to speak before 2. He was smart, curious, always asking why. He spent his afternoons with me in the workshop. I worked the jewels on the wooden table, with the loop in my eye, with the tweezers in my hand. He sat on a little stool beside me. He watched me in silence, as if he were watching magic. One day, when he was 5 years old, he asked me, "Dad, why does gold shine?" I stopped working. I looked at him, and I said, "Because it is pure sun, because it has nothing fake inside." He smiled, and I thought he understood. When he was 8, Richard helped me clean the tools. I taught him to polish, to organize, to respect each piece as if it were sacred. "This is not just gold, Richard. This is history. This is family." He nodded, and it seemed like he felt it. One Saturday he came running to the workshop with a drawing. It was a ring, rough, childish, but with details that surprised me. "Dad, when I grow up, I am going to make rings like you." I knelt in front of him, put my hands on his shoulders. "And you are going to be better than me, son, much better." He hugged me, and I closed my eyes, feeling his heart beat against my chest. That day, I thought I had done everything right. But Helen started getting sick when Richard was 12. At first it was something mild, tiredness, pains. But then came the tests, the doctors, the words we did not want to hear. Cancer, advanced, inoperable. Richard changed. He became quieter, more distant. He spent hours locked in his room. I tried to talk to him, but he only said, "I am fine, Dad. Leave me alone." And I left him alone because I did not know what to say, because I was broken too. Helen died 3 years later. The funeral was a gray day. No sun, no air. Richard did not cry. He stood in front of the coffin, hands in his pockets, looking at the ground, and, when it was all over, he left without saying anything. At 18, Richard went to New York to study business administration. I wanted him to stay, to learn the trade, to continue the family tradition, but he said, "Dad, that belongs to the past. No one works with their hands these days. The future is something else." I did not know what to answer. I just watched him pack his things, get on the bus, say goodbye with a quick hug, without looking me in the eyes. And when the bus left, I stayed standing at the station, alone, feeling I had lost something more than a son going away to study. I had lost the boy who called me hero. During the first years, Richard called often, once a week. He told me about his classes, his friends, the city. I asked him if he was eating well, if he was sleeping enough, if he needed money. He always said no. "I am fine, Dad. Don't worry." But his voice sounded different, harder, colder, as if he were learning to be someone else. At 23, he told me he had a girlfriend. Her name was Camilla. "She is smart, Dad. We study together. You are going to like her." Camilla was tall, thin, with straight blonde hair, expensive clothes, perfect manners, too perfect. She greeted me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Anderson." I shook her hand, cold, soft, without strength. During the meal, she talked about business, about opportunities, about investments. Richard looked at her with admiration. I looked at both of them and thought, "Where is my son?" After eating, I went out to the garden to smoke a cigar. Florence followed me. "Mr. Anderson, that girl is not good for him." I sighed. "I know, Florence, but he is grown up now. He does not listen to me anymore." She shook her head. "No, sir, you are his father. You still have to try." But I did not, because I was afraid of losing him more than I already had. Richard married Camilla 2 years later. It was a big wedding, in New York, at an elegant hotel with people I did not know. I went alone. I sat in the first row. I saw my son say, "I do," with a smile that seemed practiced. I saw Camilla look at him with eyes that did not shine with love, but with ambition. And when the ceremony ended, Richard hugged me. "Thanks for coming, Dad." I hugged him back, and I told him, "Take care of her, and take care of yourself too." But he was no longer listening to me. Years passed. Richard visited less and less, once a year, if that, always in a rush, always with excuses. "Dad, I have a lot of work. Dad, I have to travel." I understood, or that is what I told myself. But the truth is, it hurt. It hurt sitting in that big empty house, waiting for a call that never came. It hurt seeing the photos of when he was a boy, smiling, happy, and comparing them with the man he was now. One day, Elijah came to visit me. He found me looking at an old photo. "What are you looking at, William?" I sighed. "My son, before he got lost." Elijah put his hand on my shoulder. "There is still time. While you are alive, there is time." 2 years ago, Richard started coming more often. At first, I thought he had changed, that maybe he had reflected, that maybe he wanted to recover what we had lost. But then I noticed something. He always asked about the chest. "Dad, do you still have it there? Dad, when was the last time you checked it? Dad, have you thought about putting it in a bank?" I tried to change the subject, but he insisted. And every time he left, I stayed with that strange feeling in my chest. That feeling that something was wrong, that my son was not coming for me. He was coming for something else. Iris, my granddaughter, was the only one who noticed. She is 23 years old. She studies art history in Boston. She is just like Helen. The same green eyes, the same soft smile, the same huge heart. One day she came to visit me. We were drinking tea in the garden when she told me, "Grandpa, you trust my dad?" I looked at her, surprised. Why do you ask me that? She looked down. Because I don't. I haven't for a long time. I felt a chill on my back. Iris. She interrupted me. And I know when he lies. And lately, he lies a lot. I said nothing. Because I knew she was right, and because I could no longer deny it. 2 months before Richard brought Steve to my house, I turned 80. 80. A number that weighs heavy. That marks you. That reminds you that time runs out. Helen always said, birthdays are for being with who you love. And that day I only wanted one thing, that my son would come. Nothing else. No gifts. No parties. Just him. A week before I called him. Richard. Saturday I turn 80. Can you come? There was a silence. Dad, let me check my schedule. I'll confirm. He hung up. And I waited, but he did not confirm. Not that day. Not the next. Nor the next. And I kept waiting. Because a father always waits. On Friday, one day before my birthday, I called him again. Richard, are you coming tomorrow? He sighed, as if I were a bother. Dad, tomorrow I have an important meeting. I don't know if I can. I swallowed hard. Son, you only turn 80 once in a life. He stayed quiet. I know, Dad. Let me see what I can do. I'll call you later. He hung up. He did not call. That night I sat in the kitchen until late. Florence saw me and asked, Mr. Anderson, are you okay? I forced a smile. Yes, Florence. I'm just tired. A lie. I was not tired. I was broken. Because I knew that tomorrow I was going to turn 80, and no one was going to come. Saturday dawned with sun. A beautiful day. I got up early, took a shower, put on the shirt Helen gave me years ago. The one she said made me look elegant. I went down to the kitchen. Florence was already there. She had baked a cake. Small, simple, but made with love. Happy birthday, Mr. Anderson. I hugged her. Thank you, Florence. Thank you for remembering. She had tears in her eyes. How could I not remember? We put the cake on the table. But we did not cut it because I was still waiting. Waiting for the phone to ring. Waiting for Richard to call. Waiting for him to say, Dad, I am on my way. Hours passed. 9 in the morning. 10, 11. The phone did not ring. At noon, Florence set the table. With the good plates. With the silverware. The same ones we used when Helen was alive. Just in case he comes, she told me. I nodded. We sat down. We ate in silence. Richard's chair was empty. Helen's chair too. And I, sitting there, looking at those 2 empty spaces, felt something I had never felt. It was not sadness. It was loneliness. A loneliness so big, so deep, that it hurt physically. Like a fist squeezing my chest. Florence looked at me, not knowing what to say, because there was nothing to say. Words do not fill empty chairs. At 3 in the afternoon, the phone rang. I ran, as if I were 20 years old. Richard? It was Iris. Grandpa, happy birthday. Forgive me that I could not go. I have exams at the university, but I send you a huge hug. I smiled. Thank you, sweetie. Don't worry, she hesitated. Grandpa, is my dad there with you? I looked at the empty table. No, sweetie. He did not come. There was a long silence. And did he call at least? I closed my eyes. No. Iris sighed with anger. I cannot believe he is so. Grandpa, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It is okay, sweetie. I am fine. A lie. I was not fine. But a father does not burden his grandchildren with his pain. That afternoon I went out to the garden. I sat on the stone bench, the same one where Helen used to sit to watch the roses. The sun was starting to set. There was a beautiful silence. Birds singing. Soft wind. Everything was perfect. Except me. I was broken. I looked at my cell phone. Nothing. Not a message. Not a missed call. Nothing. My son had forgotten my birthday. Or worse, he had not forgotten. He simply did not care. And that second option hurt more, because forgetting is human, but ignoring is a choice. And Richard chose to ignore me on the day I turned 80. On the day that maybe, just maybe, could be one of the last ones. At 7 in the evening, Florence brought the cake with a candle. Mr. Anderson, you have to blow out the candle and make a wish. I looked at her. And what am I going to wish for, Florence? She sat beside me. Whatever your heart wants. I looked at the candle, the small flame dancing with the wind, and I thought about what to wish. I thought about Helen, that I wished she were alive. I thought about Richard, that I wished he were the son he used to be. But then I thought about me, and I realized that the only thing I wanted was to stop hurting, to stop waiting for something that was never going to arrive. I blew out the candle, and the wish I made was the saddest of my life. May I have the strength to accept that my son no longer loves me. That night, at 11, when I had already given up, the phone rang. It was Richard. Dad, happy birthday. Sorry for calling late. I had a horrible day. Meetings all day. His voice sounded tired, but not regretful. I said nothing. Dad, are you there? I took a deep breath. Yes, Richard. I am here, waiting for you, all day, waiting for you. He stayed quiet. Dad, I already told you I had meetings. I interrupted him, and for the first time in years I told him what I really felt. Richard, today I turned 80. 80. And you did not come. You did not even call on time. And I was here, alone, looking at the door, waiting. He sighed, annoyed. Dad, don't exaggerate. It is just a birthday. And there, in that sentence, I knew everything. It is just a birthday, I repeated slowly. You are right, son. It is just a birthday. Just like I am just your father. Just like it was only my wife who raised you. Just like it is only the house where you grew up. My voice trembled. Not from weakness, from contained rage. Richard, your mother died 22 years ago, and since then you are the only thing I have left. The only thing. And today, the day I turned 80, you did not come, not because you couldn't, but because you didn't want to. He tried to interrupt. Dad. But I continued, and the worst part is not that you didn't come. The worst part is that you didn't care. That for you I am just a birthday, something that can be forgotten, something that is not worth the effort. I hung up, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't in years. Florence, who had heard everything from the kitchen, came and hugged me. She said nothing. She just held me while I cried. And in that hug, I understood something. He was a stranger with my last name, a man who called me Dad, but who did not know what that word means. And that night, on my 80th birthday, something died inside me. It was not love. That had already died before. It was hope, the last hope, that maybe someday he would return to be who he was. That night I understood that he was not going to return, that the boy who hugged me in the workshop, who called me hero, who drew me under a yellow sun, that boy was dead, and in his place remained a man who forgot birthdays, who ignored his father, who only came when he needed something. The next day, Sunday, a package arrived. It was from Richard, a big box. I opened it. Inside was an expensive watch, shiny, with a card. Happy birthday, Dad. Sorry I couldn't go. Here I send you something so you remember me. I looked at the watch, cold, soulless, bought in a rush, probably at the airport, to soothe his guilt, and I put it in a drawer, because I did not need a watch to remember him. I needed a son. And that, no matter how much money he spent, he could not buy. That afternoon Elijah came to visit me. Happy birthday, belated, William. He brought me a bottle of old wine. We sat in the garden, and I told him everything. When I finished, he shook his head. That boy is lost. I nodded. And I can no longer save him, Elijah. I can no longer. After my forgotten birthday, after the conversation with Iris, I tried to convince myself I was exaggerating. They are just suspicions. I told myself, he hasn't done anything bad. But the following weeks proved me wrong. Richard started calling me more often, sometimes 3 times a week. But the conversations were strange, brief, cold. How are you, Dad? And before I could answer well, he was already changing the subject. Hey, Dad, that insurance I mentioned, did you think about it? I sighed. Richard. He got impatient. It's just that you don't understand. In this day and age, keeping things like that in a house is crazy. And he hung up, without saying goodbye, leaving me with the phone in my hand and an emptiness in my chest. One afternoon in October, Richard arrived without warning. He had a folder under his arm. Dad, I brought you information. Look at it. They were brochures from security companies, from banks, from armored deposits, all with the logo of Steve Vance's company. I glanced at them without interest. Richard, I don't need this. He hit the table with his open hand. Not hard, but it was enough for Florence, who was in the kitchen, to poke her head out. It's just that you are stubborn, he shouted. What is going to happen if they rob you? If something happens to you, that chest has to be protected. I looked straight at him. Protected from whom, Richard? He stayed quiet. He went pale, and then with a lower voice he said, From anyone, Dad. From anyone. But what hurt me the most was when he stopped calling me Dad in person. It started with Old Man. The first time we were in the garden, I offered him water. No, Old Man, I already drank. I froze. I thought I had heard wrong. What did you say? He didn't even flinch. What? I did not insist. But that word stuck in me like a splinter. The second time was worse. We were arguing again about the chest. He raised his voice. Old Man, understand once and for all. You are no longer fit to take care of those things. I got up from the chair. I looked him straight in the eyes. Don't call me that again. He laughed. A dry laugh. Humorless. Like that. Old man is what you are, Dad. Old and stubborn. That night I did not eat dinner. I stayed seated in the dark living room, with my hands on my knees, staring at the wall. Florence entered slowly, with a bowl of soup. Mr. Anderson, you have to eat something. I shook my head. She left the bowl on the table and sat beside me. That boy is not the same anymore. I nodded. I know. She put her wrinkled hand on mine. You don't have to put up with this. He is your son. Yes. But you also deserve respect. I swallowed hard. And what do I do, Florence? Lose him forever? She sighed. Mr. Anderson, maybe you already lost him. And maybe what you have to do now is take care of yourself. Days later, Florence told me something that froze my blood. Mr. Anderson, forgive me for what I am going to tell you, but I have to do it. I looked at her. Tell me. She lowered her voice. That man, Steve, the one who came with your son a few weeks ago. I saw him again. He was alone, outside the house. I went out to sweep the front, and there he was, across the street, with his cell phone in his hand. When he saw me, he walked fast toward a car. But before leaving, I saw him pass by the back door. He crouched down and was looking at the lock. I felt like I couldn't breathe. When was that? She looked down. 4 days ago. I didn't want to scare you, but I had to tell you. That same afternoon, I checked all the doors, all the windows, the locks, the bolts. Everything was fine, but I no longer felt safe. I felt watched, spied on, as if someone were studying my house, measuring my steps, waiting for the exact moment. I called Elijah. William, you have to do something, he told me. You cannot stay there waiting for the worst to happen. I did not know what to do. I did not want to believe it. I did not want to accept that my son, my own blood, was planning to rob me. But all the signs were there, and I could no longer ignore them. Iris came to visit me again one Sunday. This time she brought lunch. We ate in the garden. She looked at me with concern. Grandpa, I see you very tired. I forced a smile. I am fine, sweetie. She put down her fork. No, Grandpa, you are not fine. I know you. Something is happening to you. I sighed. I didn't want to worry her, but she insisted. Is it my dad again? I did not answer, and that silence was enough. She closed her eyes. Grandpa, please, tell me what is happening. So I told her everything, the thing about Steve, the calls, the old man comments, the locks. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she had tears in her eyes. I cannot believe he is capable of doing this to you, she whispered. I squeezed her hand. I don't want to believe it either, but the evidence is there. Iris stayed quiet for a long time. Then she looked at me with determination. Grandpa, I am going to talk to him. I shook my head. No, sweetie. I don't want you to get in the middle. She stood up. I don't care. He is my father, but you are my grandfather, and I am not going to let him hurt you. That afternoon, when Iris left, I stayed sitting in the garden watching the sunset, and for the first time in a long time I did not feel completely alone. Someone in this family still saw me, still cared for me. But Richard came back before Iris could talk to him. He arrived one night, close to 10, without warning. He knocked on the door hard. I opened. He was serious, tense. "Dad, we have to talk." He entered without waiting for an answer. He sat in the living room. I closed the door and remained standing. "What's wrong?" He took a deep breath. "Dad, Steve made me a proposal. It's good, very good. He can insure everything you have in that chest. But he needs to see it, appraise it, document it." I shook my head. "I already told you no." He stood up. "Dad, stop being so distrustful. He is just trying to help you." I looked at him directly. "Help me or help you?" The silence that followed was heavy. Richard looked at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before. It was not anger. It was contempt. "You know what, old man? Do what you want." He turned around and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped. Without turning around, he said, "One day you are going to need me, and that day I hope you remember this." And he left. The door closed with a dry slam. I stayed there, standing in the middle of the empty living room, feeling that I had just lost something more than an argument. I had just lost my son. And the worst was that he had already lost me a long time ago. I was just accepting it now. That night, I took out an old photo of Richard. He was 8 years old. He was smiling with a hammer in his hand in the workshop next to me. He seemed so happy, so innocent, so mine. I looked at that photo for hours, and I cried. I cried for the boy he was, for the man he could have been, and for the stranger he had become. Florence came down at some point in the night. She found me there with the photo in my hands. She said nothing. She just sat beside me, and the two of us stayed in silence, accompanying my pain, because sometimes words are not enough. Sometimes only silence remains, and the certainty that something broke forever. 3 weeks after that last fight, Richard called me. His tone was different, soft, almost affectionate. "Dad, I'm sorry. I crossed the line. I shouldn't speak to you like that." I said nothing. I heard his voice. "But I did not believe him," he continued. "I want to invite you to dinner, to New York, on Friday. We'll go to a nice place, you and me, like before. What do you say?" Something inside me wanted to believe, a small part, a foolish part that still hoped my son would return. "It's okay," I said finally. "Perfect, Dad. I'll pick you up at 5. He hung up, and I was left with the phone in my hand, wishing I wasn't wrong. But deep down, I knew I was. Friday arrived. Richard appeared in a black Mercedes, shiny, with leather seats and that expensive smell I never liked. "Do you like it, Dad?" I nodded without enthusiasm. "It's nice." I got in. He drove fast, talking about business, about contracts he just closed, about an important client. I listened halfway. I looked out the window, watching the fields pass, the hills, the towns, and I thought, when was it that I stopped knowing this man? We arrived in New York when the sun was starting to set. The sky was orange, beautiful, but I could not enjoy it, because I felt something bad was about to happen. The restaurant was right downtown, an elegant place, with a glass facade, golden lights, waiters in black vests. "Purely business people come here," Richard said as we entered. "You're going to like it." But I didn't like it. I felt out of place, with my old shirt, my worn shoes, my slow way of walking. People looked at us, or rather, they looked at me, as if asking themselves what I was doing there. Richard walked ahead, confident, greeting the maitre d'. "I have a reservation. Table for 6. I stopped. "6? He turned around. "Yes, Dad. I told you it was a dinner. Some friends are coming." But he hadn't told me anything. And there I knew this was not what he had promised me. When we arrived at the table, there were already people. Camilla was sitting, looking at her cell phone. Steve Vance was next to her in a blue suit, and that fake smile I already knew. And there were 3 other men I did not recognize. Richard introduced me quickly, without enthusiasm. "This is my dad, William." The men nodded. One raised his hand in greeting. Another barely smiled. No one stood up. No one shook my hand. I sat at the end of the table. Richard sat on the other side, far away. And that's how the worst dinner of my life began. They talked about things I did not understand, about hedge funds, about stocks, about real estate projects. I tried to follow the conversation, but I got lost. The words were technical, fast, full of codes only they handled. I ate in silence, chewed slowly. The steak was tough. Or maybe it was me who no longer had the strength even to swallow. No one asked me anything. No one looked at me. It was as if I wasn't there, as if I were a ghost sitting at the end of that long and cold table. At one moment, one of the men mentioned something about family assets. Everything must be legally documented, he said with a serious tone. Steve seized the opportunity. He looked toward Richard. Exactly. There are still people who keep fortunes in their houses, without protection, without insurance. It is a terrible risk. Everyone nodded. I felt how the conversation was directed toward me, how every word was a poisoned arrow. Richard looked at me sideways. I held his gaze. And in that silence I understood. This dinner was not a reconciliation. It was an ambush, a way to pressure me in front of others, to make me look like a stubborn and irresponsible old man. I decided to speak. Just once. They were discussing the value of antiques, and I, who had spent 60 years working with jewelry, wanted to contribute something. Actually, the value of an antique piece does not depend only on the metal or the stones. It depends on the provenance, on the history, on who. Richard interrupted me. He raised his hand as if he were a police officer stopping traffic. Dad, stop. You don't understand these things. Let us talk. I was left with the words stuck in my throat, with the fork suspended in the air, with my dignity in pieces. Camilla looked away. Steve smiled uncomfortably. The others continued talking as if nothing happened, as if I had never existed. If you are listening to my story, comment down below where you are watching from. Sometimes, knowing that I am not alone in this gives me strength to keep telling it. The rest of the dinner was a quiet hell. I no longer tried to speak. I chewed without tasting. I drank water without thirst. I just waited for it to end. Richard laughed with the others. Camilla ordered dessert. Steve told a joke and everyone laughed except me. At one moment, Richard looked at me. Are you okay, Dad? I nodded. But I was not okay. I was destroyed. And the worst was not the interruption. The worst was that he had humiliated me. In front of strangers, in front of his wife, in front of everyone. He had taken away my voice. He had taken away my respect. He had turned me into nothing. When the dinner ended, we all left together. Outside it was cold. Richard talked with Steve about I don't know what. Camilla walked ahead, in a hurry. I stayed behind, alone, watching them walk away. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around. It was an older man, about 60 years old, with a gray beard and tired eyes. Mr. Anderson? I nodded. I am Evan Burns. I worked with your son 5 years ago. He shook my hand. Nice to meet you. He looked toward where Richard was. Then he looked at me. And, with a low voice, almost a whisper, he said, Be careful with your son. He did the same to me before sinking me. Do not trust him. And trust that guy Steve even less. I froze. What happened? Evan shook his head. I don't have time. But investigate. Ask around. Richard has debts. Many. And he is desperate. Before I could ask more, he left. Walked fast. Disappeared among the people. Richard came toward me. Who was that? I shrugged. He confused me with someone. Richard looked at me suspiciously, but did not insist. Well, Dad, I'll take you to the station. Tomorrow I have meetings early. I can't drive you to Vermont. And there I understood another thing. He wasn't even going to drive me back. He was going to leave me alone. As always. The return trip by train was the longest of my life. I sat by the window. I watched the darkness outside. The lights of the towns passed fast. The people in the car slept, read, talked. I just watched my reflection in the glass, and I saw a tired old man, humiliated, betrayed by his own son. I arrived in Vermont past midnight. I walked to the taxi stand. The cold air hit my face, and I cried. There, standing in the middle of the empty street, with hands in my pockets. I cried like I hadn't done in years, because that night I understood something. My son did not love me. Maybe he never did, and I had to accept it, even if it killed me inside. The day after returning from New York, I did not leave bed until noon. Florence knocked on the door several times. "Is Mr. Anderson okay?" I did not answer. I just looked at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the humiliation still fresh. Finally, I got up, showered, dressed, went down to the kitchen. The phone rang. It was Justice Roberts, the family lawyer, a man of 67, serious, correct, who had handled my father's papers and now mine. "Mr. Anderson, I need to speak with you. It is urgent." His tone worried me. "Tell me, Justice." There was a long pause. "I prefer to tell you in person. Can I come by this afternoon?" I accepted, and I spent the rest of the day with a knot in my stomach, knowing that what was coming was not going to be good. Justice arrived at 5 in the afternoon. He brought his old leather briefcase, the same one he used since I met him. We sat in the living room. Florence brought us coffee. He waited for her to leave. Then he took a deep breath. "Mr. Anderson, what I am going to tell you is delicate. Very delicate." I nodded. "Tell me." He opened the briefcase. He took out some papers, but did not show them. "Your son Richard came to my office yesterday, without warning. He entered as if he had the right, and he asked me for something no one has asked me in 40 years of profession." My heart started beating faster. "What did he ask for?" Justice looked me straight in the eyes. "He asked to see your will." I felt as if I had been hit in the chest. "My will?" Justice nodded. "I told him it was impossible, that those documents are private, confidential, that only you can authorize their viewing." He insisted. "He told me he was your only son, that he had the right to know, that you were already old, and that it was better to have everything clear." I closed my eyes. Justice continued. I explained again that I could not. Then he changed his tone. He got serious. He took out his wallet. I froze. "What did he do?" Justice lowered his voice. "He offered me money, Mr. Anderson. $5,000. Right there, in cash, so I would show him the will without your permission." I could not believe it. I did not want to believe it. "And you?" Justice closed the briefcase with force. I threw him out of my office. I told him to never insult me that way again. "But I had to tell you. You have to know who your son is." I stood up, walked toward the window. I looked at the garden without really seeing it. "Thank you, Justice. Thank you for warning me, and thank you for being honest." He stood up too, put his hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Anderson, I knew that boy when he was a child, and I tell you this with pain. That man who came to my office is no longer the boy you raised. Be careful." He left, and I stayed there standing, feeling that every day I discovered something worse. That afternoon I did not eat. I was not hungry. I did not feel like anything. I sat in the armchair in the living room and stayed there, staring at the wall, trying to process what I had just heard. My son had tried to bribe the lawyer. My son wanted to see my will. My son was counting the days for me to die. Florence came in with a glass of water. "Mr. Anderson, you have to drink something." I shook my head. She sat in front of me. "What did the lawyer tell you?" I did not want to say it out loud, because saying it out loud made it more real. But finally, with a broken voice, I told her. Florence closed her eyes and cried. The next day, something worse happened. Florence was cleaning the dining room windows when she heard voices outside. It was 11 in the morning. I was in the workshop, polishing an old piece. She peeked out carefully. Richard was in the garden, walking from one side to the other, talking on the phone. Florence stayed still, listening unintentionally, and what she heard froze her blood. "I tell you, as soon as the old man dies, all that is mine," Richard was saying. "I am not going to wait anymore. I am tired of begging him. That chest is worth millions. Millions. And it is there, stored as if it were trash. We have to act fast, before he does something stupid and donates it or something like that." Florence felt her legs trembling. Richard kept talking. "Steve has everything ready. We just need access. And I am going to get it, one way or another." He hung up, entered the house. Florence pretended she was cleaning. He didn't even greet her. He went up to the second floor, was there a few minutes, came down and left without saying goodbye. When the car drove away, Florence ran to the workshop. I was focused on my work. "Mr. Anderson," she said with a choked voice. I looked up. What is wrong? She was breathing fast. I have to tell you something. Something terrible. And she told me, word for word, what she had heard in the garden. And when she finished, I dropped the tweezers I had in my hand, and I remained silent. That night, I could not sleep. I stayed sitting in bed with the light off, looking at the darkness. As soon as the old man dies, those words repeated in my head like an echo. My son was waiting for me to die. He was not visiting me for love. He was not calling me out of worry. He was watching me, waiting, like a vulture waits for its prey to stop breathing. I got up, walked to the room next door, the room that was Helen's. I still keep her things, her clothes, her perfumes, her books. I opened the dresser drawer, took out a photo, her and me, young, smiling, the day of our wedding. I looked at it for a long time, and then I spoke to her. Honey, I said in a low voice, honey, I think we failed. You told me not to give him everything, to teach him to deserve it. But I did not listen to you. I believed that love was enough, that with patience, with time, he was going to change. And look at me now. Look at what our son became. I pressed the photo against my chest. Forgive me, Helen. Forgive me for not listening to you. Forgive me for not being stronger. Forgive me for losing him. I sat on the floor, with my back against the wall, hugging that photo as if it were her, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since she died. Because this time I was not crying for her death. I was crying for the death of my son, of the son who never existed. I do not know how much time I spent there. Maybe an hour, maybe more. I heard steps in the hallway. The door opened slowly. It was Iris. She had come to visit me without warning. She entered the house with her key. She looked for me and found me there, on the floor, with the photo in my hands, with my face wet with tears. Grandpa, she whispered. She knelt beside me. She hugged me, and I let myself be hugged, like a child, like someone who no longer has strength. Grandpa, what happened? I could not speak. I just cried. She held me, and in that hug I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, that someone still loved me, that I was not completely alone. After a while I told her everything. The thing about the lawyer, the call in the garden, the part about as soon as the old man dies. Iris listened to me with red eyes. When I finished, she shook her head, disbelieving. It can't be. Grandpa, it can't be. But I nodded. Yes, it can be, sweetie. And it is. She stayed quiet a moment. Then she looked at me with a determination that surprised me. Grandpa, you are not going to let him do this to you. You are not going to stay quiet waiting for him to rob you. You have to do something. I sighed. And what am I going to do? He is my son. She took my hands. Precisely for that reason. Because he is your son. And because what he is doing is not what a son does. It is what a thief does. And thieves have to learn. That night something changed inside me. I stopped being the victim, and I started to be the one who makes decisions. After Iris left that night, I stayed alone in the house. Florence had gone to her room. Everything was silent. But in my head there was a thunder. Richard's words did not stop repeating. As soon as the old man dies, all that is mine. I walked through the empty house, through the workshop, through the living room, through the garden under the moon, and in every corner I saw ghosts. I saw the boy he was, the man he could have been, and the thief he had become. I sat on the garden stairs, the same ones where he sat as a child eating bread with oil, and I cried again. But this time the tears were not of sadness. They were of rage. I entered the house. I went up to the second floor, opened the door to Richard's room, the room where he grew up, where he slept until he was 18. I still keep some of his things, school trophies, childhood photos, a drawing he made for me when he was 6, me, him, and Helen, holding hands under a yellow sun. I took it, I looked at it, and I felt something break inside me. That boy in the drawing no longer existed. Maybe he never existed. Maybe it was always an illusion of mine, wanting to see goodness where there was only ambition, wanting to see love where there was only interest. I tore the drawing, in 2, in 4, in small pieces, and I let them fall to the floor. I went down to the kitchen. It was 3 in the morning. I made coffee. I sat at the table, and I thought, what am I going to do? I could report him now, But without proof, he would say I was crazy. I could confront him, but he would lie, like he always did. I could wait for him to rob me, and then report him. But that would make me a victim, and I did not want to be a victim anymore. I wanted to be the one who controls, the one who decides, the one who teaches. And then something in my mind cleared up. Cold, calculating. An idea started to form. Slow, but perfect. I took out an old notebook, a pen. I started to write. Plan. I wrote the word and underlined it twice. Step 1. Make exact replicas of every piece in the chest. Step 2. Swap the real content for the replicas. Step 3. Send the real jewelry out of the country. Step 4. Let Richard steal the chest. Step 5. Report him publicly. Step 6. Wait for him to try to sell the pieces and discover they are fake. I reread what I had written, and I smiled. It was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of war, because this was no longer about forgiving. It was about teaching, and the best lessons hurt. But then I thought about Helen, about what she would tell me if she were alive. William, he is your son. And I would answer her, not anymore, honey. Not anymore. Because a son does not wait for his father's death. A son does not bribe lawyers. A son does not call the man who gave him life old man. Richard had stopped being my son the day he chose gold over me, and I, finally, had to accept it, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much it destroyed me. I had to accept that the son I loved died a long time ago. At 5 in the morning, I made a decision. I was going to try one last time, one last chance. I was going to call Richard. I was going to tell him everything. No filters, no fear. I was going to put the truth in his face. And if after that he still chose the same path, then I would execute the plan without guilt, without remorse. I picked up the phone. I dialed his number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Dad, what happened? It is 5 in the morning. His voice sounded annoyed. I took a deep breath. Richard, I have to talk to you. It is important. There was a silence. Dad, I can't right now. I am sleeping. Call me later. And he hung up, just like that. Without more. Without asking if I was okay. Without worrying. And there, in that click of the phone, everything was confirmed. I dialed again. This time he did not answer. I dialed again. Voicemail. Richard, I said in the message, I know what you are planning. I know you want that chest. I know you are waiting for me to die. And I want you to know something. That chest is never going to be yours. Never. Because a son who waits for his father's death deserves nothing. Absolutely nothing. I hung up, and I waited. 1 hour, 2, nothing. Richard did not call back. He did not write. Nothing. And that nothing was the clearest answer I could receive. He had chosen, and so had I. That morning, when Florence arrived, she found me sitting in the workshop, with the notebook open, with the plan written down. Did Mr. Anderson not sleep? I shook my head. No, Florence. But it doesn't matter. Because tonight, I made the most important decision of my life. She sat in front of me. What are you going to do? I looked her straight in the eyes. I am going to let my son condemn himself. I am going to give him enough rope to hang himself. And when he does, the whole world is going to know who he really is. Florence nodded slowly. Then I am with you. Until the end. I took her hand. Thank you, Florence. You don't know how much that means. Later, Iris arrived. She had come without warning again. She saw me with the notebook. Grandpa, what is that? I showed her the plan. She read it in silence. When she finished, she looked up. Her eyes were teary. Grandpa, this is going to destroy him. I nodded. I know, but he chose to destroy himself first. I am just going to make sure he learns the lesson. She stayed quiet a moment. Then she said something that surprised me. I am going to help you. With everything. Whatever you need. I hugged her. Thank you, sweetie. But this is going to cost me dearly. It is going to cost me my son. She looked at me with tears. Grandpa, you already lost him. A long time ago. Now you are just closing the door. That afternoon I finally called Elijah. But before that I did something else. I entered the back room. I opened the chest. I took out every piece. One by one. I put them on the table. And while I looked at them, I spoke to them, as if they had a soul. You are going to help me teach him a lesson. The last lesson. I closed the empty chest, and in that moment I felt that something in me had also emptied out. The hope, the illusion, the unconditional love. Everything was gone, and what remained was an old man, tired, but decided to get justice. Even if it cost me the last thing I had left, the possibility of hugging my son again without feeling betrayal. The day after making the decision, with the plan already written in the notebook, I called Elijah Ford. Elijah, I need to see you. Today. It is urgent. He noticed something in my voice. Are you okay, William? I did not answer that question. Can you come to the estate at 10? He accepted without hesitation. I hung up. Florence prepared coffee for me. What are you going to do, Mr. Anderson? I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. It was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of decision. I am going to teach him a lesson he will never forget, even if it costs me the last thing I have. Florence nodded slowly. Then count on me. Iris had slept at the house. She came down the stairs. Grandpa, I want to help too. The three of us looked at each other. And there, in that old kitchen, the plan was formed. Elijah arrived on time. He brought his straw hat, his plaid shirt, his worried face. We sat in the workshop. I closed the door. Elijah, I need you to do something for me. Something I have never asked you. He took off his hat. Tell me. I took a deep breath. I need you to make me exact replicas of every piece I have in the chest, every bar, every jewel, every ring, everything. Elijah looked at me as if he didn't understand. Replicas. I nodded. He frowned. William, what for? I looked him straight in the eyes. To let my son rob me, but so he doesn't steal what he thinks. The silence was long. Elijah leaned back in the chair, and then slowly he began to understand. Are you saying that? I interrupted him. Yes, I am going to substitute all the real content for replicas. The true jewels I am going to send away, to a safe place, and I am going to let Richard take the chest. But when he opens it, when he tries to sell it, he is going to discover that everything is fake, and there he is going to understand who I am. Elijah stayed quiet a moment. Then he sighed. William, that is brilliant. And painful. I nodded. I know, but it is the only thing I can do. If I call the police now, he is going to say it is a lie, that I am old, that I am paranoid. I need proof. I need him to condemn himself. Elijah shook my hand. Count on me. That same afternoon we opened the chest. Iris, Florence, Elijah and I. We put everything on the workshop table. Antique jewelry, rings with emeralds, pearl necklaces, pure gold bars. Everything shone under the light. Iris watched with eyes wide open. Grandpa, I had never seen all this together. I nodded. This is 3 generations of work. This is history. And your father thinks he can take it as if it meant nothing. Elijah took measurements. He took photos, made sketches. It is going to take me 2 weeks, he said. But I am going to make the best replicas of my life. They are going to look real. Only an expert with special equipment will be able to tell the difference. I hugged him. Thank you, friend. Thank you for not judging me. Iris stood looking at everything. Then she looked at me. Grandpa, are you sure about this? He is your son. I interrupted her softly. For that very reason, sweetie. Because he is my son. Because if I don't teach him now, he is never going to learn. And he is going to end up destroying himself. I can no longer save him, but maybe I can prevent him from getting more lost. She had tears in her eyes. And what if after this he never speaks to you again? I smiled with sadness. Sweetie, he already doesn't speak to me. He only uses me, and I prefer him to hate me knowing the truth, than to use me believing I am a fool. She hugged me and cried on my shoulder. I admire you so much, Grandpa. I kissed her forehead. And I admire you, my child, for staying by my side. During the following 2 weeks, Elijah worked day and night. He came early, left late, melted metals, carved fake stones, aged new pieces so they looked antique. He was an artist, a master. I helped him when I could. Sometimes Iris came after classes and brought us food. Florence watched the house, warned if Richard appeared. Everything was secret. Everything was precise. One afternoon, while Elijah polished a fake ring, he told me, "You know, William, I never thought I was going to do something like this. Replicas to deceive a thief. And even less if that thief is your son." I sighed. I didn't think I would reach this point either. But here we are. He nodded. Here we are. Finally, the replicas were ready. Elijah brought them in a wooden box. We put them on the table. They were perfect. Identical. They shone the same. Weighed similar. Only an expert with lab equipment could notice that the gold was not pure, that the emeralds were glass, that the pearls were fake. "Elijah, this is a work of art," I told him. He smiled tiredly. "It is the best thing I have done in my life. And the saddest, too." I paid him. He did not want to accept. "This is for friendship." But I insisted. "Take it. You deserve it." He took the money and, before leaving, hugged me tight. "May God be with you, friend." I nodded. "I don't know if God is with me anymore, but I know you are. And that is enough for me." That night, with the help of Iris and Florence, we substituted the contents of the chest. The real jewels were stored in sealed suitcases. Iris would take charge of taking them to a bank in Switzerland, in the name of a foundation I had created in secret in Helen's name. The chest remained filled with replicas. Perfect. Intact. No one would notice the difference. But before closing it, I took out a paper. I wrote a letter. With my own handwriting. I trembled while I wrote. Not from fear. From rage. From pain. From disappointment. I wrote, "What you were looking for was not gold. It was power. And that was never in this chest. It was in your heart, and you lost it a long time ago. Your father." I folded the letter. I put it inside an envelope, and I placed it at the bottom of the chest underneath the fake bars. Iris watched me in silence. "Grandpa, do you think he is going to read it?" I locked the chest with the key. Maybe, maybe not. But I needed to write it. I needed him to know that I am not a stupid old man, that I knew, that I always knew. Florence put her hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Anderson, you are the bravest man I know." I shook my head. "I am not brave, Florence. I'm just tired. Tired of being deceived, tired of being invisible, tired of waiting for my son to be who he is never going to be." I closed the chest, turned the key, and I felt something similar to peace. Iris left that same night for Switzerland with the real jewels. I gave her a signed letter. Legal documents. Everything necessary. "Take care of them, sweetie. That is the true legacy. Not the gold, but what we are going to do with it." She nodded. "I won't fail you, Grandpa." She left, and I stayed in the house with Florence. We looked at the closed chest. He did not know that inside there was no longer anything of value, just soulless metal, stones without history, and a letter with the truth. "And now what, Mr. Anderson?" asked Florence. I sat in the workshop chair. "Now we wait. We wait for him to take the next step, and when he does, he is going to fall into his own trap." That night I slept better than in months, because I was no longer a victim waiting to be robbed. I was a father teaching his son the hardest lesson of his life. I woke up early. I went out to the garden. The sun rose slowly over the hills. The air smelled of wet earth, and for the first time in a long time I felt something similar to hope. Not hope that Richard would change, that I had already lost, but hope that I, William Anderson, 81 years old, jeweler of 3 generations, husband of Helen, father of Richard, grandfather of Iris, still had dignity, and that dignity no one was going to steal from me, not even my own son. 4 days passed after closing the chest with the replicas. 4 days of silence. Richard did not call. He did not come. Nothing. I continued my normal routine. I had breakfast with Florence. I worked in the workshop. I went out to the garden in the afternoons. But everything was different, because now I knew what was coming, and I was prepared. Iris called me from Switzerland every night. "Grandpa, everything is safe. The jewels are in the safe deposit box, the documents signed, the foundation registered." I breathed relieved. "Thank you, sweetie. Now only waiting remains." And waiting was the hardest part, because I knew that at any moment my son was going to deliver the final blow. And when he did, I would be ready. On the 5th day, a Tuesday afternoon, Richard appeared. He arrived alone, without Camilla, without Steve, without that air of arrogance he always brought. He knocked on the door. Florence opened. She warned me with a look. I was in the workshop. I took a deep breath. I went out. I saw him standing in the living room. He wore jeans, a simple shirt, hands in his pockets. He seemed different, more human, softer. "Hi, Dad," he said, his voice, like before. I stayed in the doorframe. "Hi, Richard." He came closer. "Can we talk?" I nodded. We sat down, and for a second, just a second, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Richard spoke slowly. He looked at the floor, not at me. "Dad, I have been thinking a lot. About us, about how we drifted apart." I listened in silence. He continued, "I know I have been hard on you. I know I have said things I shouldn't have, and I am sorry." I felt something move in my chest, something I believed dead. "Dad, maybe you are right. Maybe I have drifted too far. Maybe I have forgotten what is important." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. I looked at his eyes, and for a moment, I saw the boy he was, the son I lost, Richard, I started to say, but he raised his hand. "Let me finish." I nodded, and I waited, and in that silence, a part of me prayed that what came next was real. "That is why I want to help you," he said, and there, in that word, something changed. Help you was not forgive me. It was not I miss you. It was something else. He kept talking. "I want you to be calm, Dad, that you don't worry anymore about that chest, about security, about anything." I started to feel cold. "I have spoken with Steve. He has everything ready. We can transfer the chest to a professional deposit, armored, with insurance, with everything." There it was, the truth. He had not come to apologize. He had not come to reconcile. He had come to close the deal, and he was doing it in the most cowardly way, disguising it as worry, as love, as help. I let him speak. I did not interrupt him. He continued. "Dad, I will take care of everything. You don't have to do anything. Just give me permission. Sign the papers and that's it. You are going to sleep peaceful knowing that everything is protected." He spoke fast now, with enthusiasm, like a salesman, like a con artist, and I just watched his mouth move, saying beautiful words that hid dirty lies. When he finished, there was silence. He looked at me waiting for an answer, waiting for me to say no, so he could insist, so he could keep manipulating. But I did not say no. I said something he did not expect. "It's okay, son." Richard blinked. "What?" I repeated calmly, with a firm voice. He couldn't believe it. "Seriously?" I nodded. "Yes, you are right. I am already old. I can no longer take care of those things. If you want to take charge, go ahead." I saw how his eyes lit up, how his mouth curved into a smile he tried to hide. "Dad, thank you, really. Thank you for trusting me." I said nothing more. He stood up, he hugged me, and I let him hug me. I felt his arms around me, and I did not feel love. I felt a lie. I felt betrayal. I felt the hug of a stranger who bore my son's name. "I am going to coordinate everything with Steve," he said, excited. "In a few days we come to pick it up. Does that sound good?" I nodded. "Sounds good." He smiled more. "Perfect. Dad, really, this is for the best. You will see." He left, got into his car, started it. He left, and I stayed standing in the door, watching him move away, knowing that was, probably, the last time I would see him as my son. Because when he discovered the truth, when he opened that chest and saw that everything was fake, he was going to hate me. He was going to curse me. He was going to want to destroy me. But I didn't care anymore, because I had already lost him a long time ago. Florence came out of the kitchen. She had been listening to everything. "Mr. Anderson," she said with a choked voice. I looked at her. "It is done, Florence." He took the bait. She had red eyes. "And now?" I walked toward the workshop. "Now we wait. We wait for him to come rob me. And when he does, he is going to discover that the thief robbed himself." She shook her head. I cannot believe it has come to this. I sat in my workshop chair. I looked at the old tools, the same ones my grandfather used, the same ones my father used, the same ones I used all my life, and I thought, 3 generations of honesty, and my son destroyed them in a single generation. That night Richard called. He sounded happy. Dad, Camilla wants to say hello. He put the phone on speaker. I heard Camilla's voice. Mr. Anderson, how good that you accepted. Richard is very happy. Really? It is for the best. I didn't say much. Yes, thank you. Then Steve spoke. Mr. Anderson, I am going to send the papers by mail. We just need your signature. And on Friday we come by to pick up the chest. Does that seem fine? I felt nausea, listening to how they planned to rob me in front of me, as if I didn't know. It seems fine, I said with a neutral voice. Perfect, said Steve. See you Friday. They hung up, and I was left with the phone in my hand, feeling a mix of rage, sadness, and something similar to satisfaction, because I knew what was coming on Thursday. The papers arrived by courier. I opened them. They were transfer documents. Authorization, full of legal terms. I read them carefully. They did not say secure deposit. They said transfer of temporary custody. It was a legal trap. Once I signed, the chest would officially be under Richard's custody. Legally. He could do whatever he wanted with it. I called Justice Roberts. Mr. Anderson, do not sign that. It is a scam, I sighed. I know, Justice, but I am going to sign. He stayed quiet. Are you sure? I closed my eyes. Completely sure. Trust me. I hung up. I signed the papers. I put them in the envelope and left them ready for when they came. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed sitting in the living room, with the lights off, looking at the clock. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow Richard would come. Tomorrow he would take the chest. And I was going to let him, without fighting, without screaming, without crying. Because this time the war was not won with strength. It was won with intelligence. And I had already played my best card. I got up, walked to the back room. I looked at the closed chest. It shone under the moonlight entering through the window. I passed my hand over it. Cold, heavy, empty. And I whispered, Tomorrow, son. Tomorrow you are going to learn who your father is. Friday dawned gray. Heavy clouds covered the sky. It was cold. I woke up early at 5 in the morning. I hadn't slept well. I showered, dressed, went down to the kitchen. Florence was already there, preparing coffee in silence. We looked at each other. No need to speak. She knew what was going to happen today. Mr. Anderson, do you want me to stay with you? I shook my head. No, Florence. Leave early. I don't want you to be here when they come. She hugged me. You are the strongest man I know. I did not feel strong. I felt tired, but I also felt something else. I felt justice, and that kept me standing. Richard called at 9 in the morning. Dad, we are on our way. We arrive at noon. I said yes. He hung up. The hours passed slow. I sat in the garden looking at the gray sky. I thought about Helen. I thought about what she told me before dying. Do not give everything to Richard. Teach him to deserve it first. She was right, as always. And I, finally, was doing what I should have done years ago. Teaching him, not with words, but with consequences. At 12 sharp, I heard the engine of a vehicle. It was not Richard's Mercedes. It was a white van, big, ready to carry heavy things, ready for the robbery. 3 people got out, Richard, Steve, and surprisingly, Camilla. She almost never came. But today, yes, because today was payday. They knocked on the door. I opened. Richard was smiling. Hi, Dad. I did not smile. Hello. Steve brought a briefcase. Mr. Anderson, here are the signed documents. Everything legal. Everything in order. I let them pass. They entered as if the house were theirs. Camilla looked around, evaluating, calculating. Steve went straight to the point. Where's the chest? I pointed toward the back room. There. Richard put his hand on my shoulder. Thanks, Dad. Really. This is for the best. I did not answer. I just watched them. And in my silence, there was a farewell. They entered the back room. I stayed in the doorframe, watching. Steve took out tools. Richard and he lifted the chest between the two. It was heavy. They grunted from the effort. Camilla supervised. Careful. Don't hit it. They took it out slowly. Through the hallway. Through the living room. Toward the door. I followed them in silence, like a ghost, like a witness of my own misfortune, or my own revenge. It depended on how you saw it. They arrived at the van, opened the back doors. There was a ramp. They loaded the chest carefully, secured it with ropes, closed the doors, and just like that, in less than 15 minutes, they took what they thought was my fortune. Richard came back toward me. He gave me a hug. Dad, it's done. Now you are going to be calm. I let him hug me. I said nothing. He pulled back. I'll call you tomorrow to tell you how everything got installed in the deposit. I nodded. Camilla said goodbye with a kiss on the cheek. Cold. Calculated. Steve shook my hand. A pleasure, Mr. Anderson. They got in the van, started it, and left. I stayed standing in the door, watching them move away down the dirt road, kicking up dust, taking the chest, taking the replicas, taking their own sentence, and I did not feel sadness. I felt something similar to peace. But then I heard a cry. I turned around. Florence was in the second-floor window, crying. She had returned. She hadn't left. She had stayed hidden, watching everything. I went up the stairs, entered the room. She was there with her hands on her face, sobbing. Mr. Anderson. I saw it all. I saw how they took it. Like thieves. Like... She couldn't finish. I got close. I hugged her. It's over, Florence. It's over. She looked at me with red eyes. How can you be so calm? I looked her straight. Because I already punished him, Florence. He just doesn't know it yet. She understood and stopped crying. That afternoon I called Justice Roberts. Justice. It happened as we expected. They took the chest. There was silence on the other side. Do you want me to file the report? I took a deep breath. Yes. But not as common theft. I want it registered as family betrayal. I want it to be in the newspapers. In the news. Everywhere. I want Richard Anderson's name to be marked. Justice hesitated. Mr. Anderson, that is going to be very public. Very painful. I closed my eyes. I know. But it is necessary. Because if I don't do it, he is going to keep believing he can do whatever he wants without consequences. And that has to end. Justice sighed. Understood. Tomorrow, first thing I file the report. That night was the longest of my life. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew what was coming. Richard was going to open the chest. He was going to try to sell the pieces. And at some moment in the next few days he was going to discover that everything was fake, and there his world was going to crumble. I sat in the dark living room, looked at Helen's photo that is always on the mantel, and spoke to her. Honey, I did it. I did what you asked me. I taught him. I don't know if he is going to learn, but at least I tried. The moon entered through the window. The house was silent. And I, for the first time in months, felt in control. I was no longer the victim. I was the judge. And the verdict was already given. The next day, Saturday morning, Justice filed the report. Not in any police station. He filed it directly with the district attorney, with documents, with photos, with testimonies from Florence, with the call history, with everything. The report said, grand larceny and elder abuse. The son, Richard Anderson, 48 years old, stole a chest valued at $17.5 million from the residence of his father, William Anderson, 81 years old, through deceit and manipulation. The news reached the press in less than 2 hours. Local newspapers published it that same afternoon, the Nationals the next day, on Sunday. My phone did not stop ringing. Journalists, neighbors, people I hadn't seen in years. Everyone wanted to know. Everyone wanted to talk. I did not answer anyone. I just waited. I waited for the call I knew was going to arrive, and it arrived Monday morning. It was Richard. His voice sounded desperate. Dad, what did you do? Everyone says I robbed you. This is crazy. I listened in silence. He shouted, Dad, I only wanted to help you. I didn't rob you. The chest is safe. It is in the deposit like we agreed. I waited for him to shut up. And when he did, I told him, with a calm voice, Richard, open the chest. There was silence. What? I repeated. Open the chest, and then call me. I hung up. I sat down, and I smiled. It was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of justice. Florence entered. Was it him? I nodded. Yes. And what is going to happen when he opens it? I looked out the window. He is going to discover that the man he thought he could rob was smarter than him, stronger than him, and more dignified than him. And that is going to be the most expensive lesson of his life. 2 days passed without news from Richard. 2 days of tomb-like silence. I knew something was happening. I could feel it. Tuesday night, Iris called me from Switzerland. Grandpa, I just saw the news. The police in Antwerp issued an alert. They are looking for 3 people who tried to sell jewels of suspicious origin. My heart accelerated. Antwerp? She confirmed. Belgium. It seems your son didn't waste time. I hung up. I sat down, and I waited, because I knew that at any moment Richard's world was going to explode, and I was going to be here, 3,000 miles away, watching how everything he built with lies collapsed. Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Justice. His voice sounded agitated, almost excited. Mr. Anderson, they found him. The Belgian police detained him in Antwerp. Him, his wife, and Steve Vance. I closed my eyes. What happened? They tried to sell the pieces in the Diamond District. It is the biggest jewel market in Europe. They entered a prestigious appraisal house, a place where millions move. The appraiser, a man named Meneer Van Houten, specialist with 50 years of experience, examined the pieces. He paused. And? I asked, although I already knew the answer. He said everything was fake. Justice continued telling me the details the police had given him. Van Houten put the first piece under the microscope, a bar that claimed to be pure gold. He weighed it, scratched it, subjected it to a chemical test, and in less than 5 minutes he looked up and said, "This is brass plated in gold. Fake." Richard went pale. Steve started sweating. Camilla stood paralyzed. "Impossible," shouted Richard. "Check them all." Van Houten took out another piece, an emerald necklace, looked at them with the loupe, did a refraction test, and sentenced, "Dyed glass. Fake." One by one, he examined every piece, every ring, every bracelet, every bar, and all, absolutely all, were perfect replicas, but without value. Richard lost control. Continued Justice. He started screaming, "My father tricked me. That old man tricked me." Van Houten frowned. He asked him where he had gotten those pieces. Richard, in his desperation, told the truth. "From my father's house, in America. They are mine by inheritance." But Van Houten already knew. He had already seen the news in the international papers, the case of the son who stole the father's fortune. He called the police. In less than 10 minutes, 3 patrols arrived. They surrounded the place. Richard tried to flee. Steve, too. But they didn't even reach the door. They detained all 3. Handcuffs, reading of rights, everything. I listened in silence, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Justice. But the best part, said Justice with a smile in his voice, was what happened after. In the police station, while waiting for transfer, Camilla exploded. She screamed at Richard in front of everyone. "You promised me millions. You told me we were going to be rich, and you brought me to this country with fake jewels like an idiot." Richard tried to calm her. "Camilla, please, we are going to fix this." But she didn't stop. "There is nothing to fix. Your father humiliated you. He made you look like a thief and like a fool." And then she said something that confirmed everything I suspected. "I married you for the money you were going to inherit, and turns out there is nothing. Nothing." Justice made a dramatic pause. When the police coordinated extradition, Camilla asked to speak with the consulate. She said she knew nothing, that Richard had deceived her, that she was a victim too. They let her go, without charges, for lack of evidence. She took the first flight back, but not to New York, to her mother's house. When Richard found out she had abandoned him, he fell apart. He cried like a child in the cell. The guard said he didn't stop repeating, I lost everything. Everything. I closed my eyes. I didn't feel pity. I felt what I had to feel. The consequences of his acts had finally caught up to him. "And Steve?" I asked. Justice laughed with bitterness. Steve was even more cowardly. When he saw everything collapsing, he negotiated with the police. He gave them information, told them Richard had planned everything, that he was just a hired advisor, that he didn't know the chest was stolen. He lied in every word. But the police didn't believe him. He has a record. 3 previous scams. They extradited him together with Richard. But during the flight, Steve didn't say a word to your son. He avoided him, ignored him, as if he didn't exist. And Richard, handcuffed in the seat next to him, looked at him with hate. Because finally, he understood what it was to be alone, completely alone. The news exploded in all the media. Son steals family fortune. But the chest was empty. The headlines were brutal. The thief who robbed himself. Father teaches millionaire lesson to greedy son. Gold replicas for a fake son. Social networks filled with comments. Some supported me. That father is a genius. That is how justice is done. Others criticize me. He is very hard on his son. He should have talked to him before. I didn't read much. I didn't care about the opinion of strangers. I only cared about one thing. That my son learned. And that the world knew who he really was. 3 days after the arrest, I received a call from a journalist. Her name was Bridget Solano. She worked for an important national newspaper. "Mr. Anderson, I know it has been a difficult week, but I would like to talk to you. Hear your version." I hesitated. I didn't like cameras. I didn't like exposure. But justice convinced me. "Mr. Anderson, if you don't speak, others will speak. They are going to invent things. It is better that you tell your truth." I accepted. Bridget came to the estate a Friday afternoon. She brought a cameraman, a notebook, and a look that seemed sincere. We sat in the garden. She turned on the recorder and started asking, "Mr. Anderson, why did you do this? Why didn't you simply report him before?" I looked her straight in the eyes and answered calmly, "With the truth, because I needed him to condemn himself. Because if I reported him without proof, he was going to say I was crazy, that I was old, that I was paranoid. But this way, with the chest in his hands, trying to sell the pieces, he cannot deny anything." He wrote his own sentence himself. Bridget took notes quickly. "And the replicas? How did you make them?" I smiled barely. "I have friends, friends of a lifetime, people who know me, who know who I am and who help me do justice." She continued, "Did you not feel guilt? Did you not feel you were betraying your son?" That question hurt me. I took a deep breath. "Miss Solano, I did not betray my son. He betrayed me. I only taught him something I should have taught him years ago, that actions have consequences, that you cannot steal from your father and expect nothing to happen, that greed destroys, that gold can be recovered, but dignity cannot." My words came out firm, without trembling. Bridget had tears in her eyes. "And would you forgive him?" I looked toward the horizon. I already forgave him. A long time ago. But forgiving does not mean forgetting. Nor does it mean he doesn't have to pay for what he did. The interview lasted an hour. It was published on Sunday. On the front page, with my photo, with my words, and with a headline I will never forget. "Dignity cannot." After the interview, everything changed. People saw me differently, with respect, with admiration. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to me in years came to greet me. Strangers stopped me on the street. "Mr. Anderson, what you did was brave." I did not feel brave. I felt tired, but I also felt something else. I felt I had recovered something I thought lost forever. My name, my dignity. A week after the interview, I made a public announcement. I called Justice. I want to summon the press. I have something important to say. He organized everything. A conference at the town hall. Journalists from all over the country arrived. Cameras, microphones, flashes. I entered with Iris by my side. She held my arm. I sat in front of everyone, and I spoke. "Good afternoon. My name is William Anderson. I am 81 years old, and I am here to make an announcement." The room went silent. As everyone knows, My son Richard tried to steal a chest containing jewelry and bars valued at $17.5 million. What he did not know is that the real content was no longer there. It had been substituted by replicas. I paused. Many have asked me where the real gold is, and today I am going to answer. The real gold is in Switzerland, in a safety deposit box, registered in the name of a foundation I created in honor of my late wife, Helen Anderson. Murmurs filled the room. I continued, "This foundation has a purpose: to rescue family jewelry businesses in bankruptcy, to help artisans who, like me, have dedicated their life to a trade that is disappearing. The $17.5 million will be used to give interest-free loans, to train young people, to preserve the tradition, because the true legacy is not kept in a chest, it is given away." The cameras didn't stop flashing. Journalists wrote frantically. Bridget Solano, in the first row, looked at me with a smile. My son believed that gold was his future, but his future was never in the gold. It was in being an honest man, and he lost that a long time ago. I hope that someday he recovers it. Thank you. I stood up. The applause began, slow at first, then louder, more intense. People stood up. Iris cried by my side. I did not cry. I just nodded and left there feeling I had closed a chapter, that I had done the right thing, that Helen, wherever she was, would be proud. The following days were a whirlwind. Interviews, recognitions. The mayor invited me to an event. A university asked me to give a talk. I accepted some things, rejected others. But the most important thing was that finally I could sleep peacefully, knowing I had kept my promise. The promise I made to Helen before dying. Richard was judged 3 months later. I did not go to the trial. I didn't want to see him there. Handcuffed, humiliated. Justice kept me informed. He was sentenced to 2 years of probation. He won't go to jail if he fulfills certain conditions. Community service, psychological therapy, prohibition of approaching you. I nodded. It's fine. Steve received 3 years. He had a record. He didn't have the same luck. Camilla was never charged. She divorced Richard by mail, without a trial, without anything. She just signed papers and disappeared from his life. Evan Burns, the ex-partner who warned me, called me, "Mr. Anderson, justice was done." I thanked him. "Thank you for warning me that day." He laughed. "Thank you for having the courage to do something." 6 months passed. Half a year of silence. Richard did not call me. He did not write. Nothing. I continued my life. I worked in the workshop. Iris visited me often. The foundation started working. We helped 5 jewelry stores, gave scholarships to 10 young people. Helen's name was on every plaque, on every document, and I felt that, somehow, she was still alive. One Saturday afternoon, while I was pruning the roses in the garden, I heard the noise of a car. I looked up. It was an old taxi. It stopped in front of the house. The door opened, and Richard got out. He was thin, pale, with a messy beard. Simple clothes. He no longer wore Swiss watches or expensive suits. He seemed broken. He walked slowly toward me. I left the pruning shears on the table. I said nothing. He stopped a few feet away. We looked at each other in silence. A heavy silence full of everything that had happened. "Dad," he said finally. His voice sounded different. Soft. Broken. I did not answer. He took another step. "Dad, I come to ask for forgiveness." And then he did something I never thought he would do. He knelt. There in the middle of the garden, with the damp earth staining his knees, my son knelt in front of me. "Forgive me, Dad. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything." Tears fell down his face. "I lost everything. Camilla, my friends, my reputation, my dignity, everything." I looked at him from above, not with hate, not with love either, with a deep sadness, a sadness of a father who sees his son destroyed and knows he can do nothing to save him. "Dad, please, say something. Scream at me, hit me, whatever. But don't look at me like that." I crouched down, got to his level. I looked him straight in the eyes. "Son, I forgave you a long time ago, since before you took the chest, because I knew you were going to do it, and because I also knew this was going to happen. He sobbed. Then, "Do you forgive me?" I sighed. "I forgive you, but there is something I cannot give back to you." He looked at me confused. "What, Dad?" I put my hand on his shoulder. "Your name, that you lost on your own." Richard closed his eyes. He understood. "Your name, Richard, is no longer the same. When people hear it, they are going to remember what you did, the betrayal, the theft, the greed, and that I cannot erase. Only you can erase that." He kept crying. "How, Dad? How do I recover it?" I stood up, offered him my hand. He took it. I helped him stand up. "Don't ask me for forgiveness, son. Ask yourself. Forgive yourself for what you were, and start doing what you could have been. Work, help, build, and maybe someday, when someone hears your name, they think of something good. But I'm not going to see that. That you are going to have to do alone." Richard hugged me. Tight, desperate. Like when he was a child and was afraid, I let him hug me. But I didn't hug him back, because something inside me was already broken, and I couldn't pretend everything was fine. He pulled away, wiped his tears. "Thanks, Dad, for everything. For the lesson. For not giving up on me." I nodded. "Take care, son." He walked toward the taxi. Before getting in, he turned around. "Are you ever going to be able to look at me like before?" I took a deep breath, and I told him the truth. "I don't know, Richard. Honestly, I don't know." He nodded, got in the taxi, and left. I stayed standing there, in the middle of the garden, watching the car move away. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt relief, because, finally, after so much time, I had spoken my truth. A few weeks later, Iris came to visit me. But this time, she didn't come alone. She brought her son, my great-grandson, a 3-year-old boy, with huge eyes and a mischievous smile. His name was Matthew. He ran toward me with open arms. "Grandpa Will!" I picked him up. I hugged him, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Iris looked at me with tenderness. "Grandpa." So pure. "Yes, sweetie. When he is old enough to understand, I am going to tell him that true gold is not kept, it is given away, that fortunes are lost. But dignity, if you take care of it, is forever." Iris hugged me. The three of us stayed there, in the garden, under the sun, and I knew that, despite everything, despite the pain, despite the betrayal, something good had come out of this. I had recovered my name, and that no one could take away from me. And you? Have you ever trusted someone who betrayed you? Did you have the courage to do something about it? Or did you stay quiet waiting for time to heal the wounds? Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who hurt us most, and that hurts. It hurts like nothing else in the world. But it also teaches us. It teaches us who we are. It teaches us what we are willing to tolerate. And it teaches us that dignity is the only thing we truly possess. If this story touched your heart, leave me a comment down below. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me if you ever lived something similar. And if these stories of life, of pain, of justice, move you as much as me. Subscribe. Every day, I share a new story. A story that could be yours, or someone you know. See you in the next story. Have a great day, or a great night, wherever you are.